apparently some sort of symbol of how the man's life hadn't worked out the way he planned, and the old man hated the bourbon, too, which he kept drinking anyways. I couldn't understand why the old man didn't just get up off his ass and chop the wood himself, and I also couldn't understand why the author didn't use metaphors or similes in his story, but he didn't. The story was more or less an unadorned grocery list of all the things the old man hated. And speaking of grocery lists, the old man's wife entered the kitchen with her grocery list and told the old man she was going to the store. And as an aside, she looked at the dead wood stove and said, "Pa?" The old man didn't answer her, maybe because he didn't like to be called Pa, or maybe because he liked to be called Pa so much he wanted his wife to call him that again, or maybe because men like him are only called Pa in books and he didn't realize he was in one. In any case, his wife said it again, "Pa," and then, "It's cold in here. Why don't you go out and chop some wood?" The old man didn't look at his wife when she said this. Instead, he looked at the axe resting in the corner, and he looked at it in such a resigned, meaningful way that it was clear that he wouldn't chop wood with it, but would instead use the axe to commit some horrible, violent act against his wife, or his son, or both, and that the violence was inevitable. The story ended with him staring at the axe, and then the writer-in-residence left the podium and reclaimed his seat next to the director. There were several minutes of big, thunderous applause. It was like the time I spoke to Catherine's his daughter, Catherine's first-grade class for career day. I bought in the Ziploc plastic bag I'd invented for show and tell, and I showed the kids how it zipped and locked, and then told them how I'd made the bag that way and why. Afterwards, the kids gave me a sustained, raucous ovation, not because they were so impressed by the bag, but because they were competing with one another to see who would clap the longest and the loudest. The clapping in the Robert Frost place was like that. Even I slapped my hands together in the spirit of the thing and to be agreeable. The only person in the audience not clapping was Peter. At first, I thought it was just that he clapped the way he talked. But then I noticed he was staring at the writer-in-residence, really staring at him, squint-eyed and furious, as if the writer-in-residence were an especially hateful eye exam. Instead of clapping, Peter was grinding his fist into his left palm in such a way that it made me feel very sorry for the palm. "What's wrong?" I whispered. "I hate him," I growled. "Why?" I asked, but he didn't answer me, not even with a shrug. That's how angry he was. And after thinking about it a few moments, the applause continued, which was good because I think better with the help of white noise, the way some people sleep better with the help of a fan. I was pretty sure I knew why he hated the writer-in-residence. I had a clear picture. There's a lot of stuff in here now that's not going to make any sense. It would have if you'd read the book. I had a clear picture of Peter sitting at home, the stove blazing away, his plunger and dog close by, and reading book after book after book. Maybe he'd read the writer-in-residence's books too, and they, with the help of Ethan Frome, were telling him not what sort of person he could be, but what sort of person he was and always would be. Grim, beaten down, violent, inarticulate. Maybe this was what the director meant by the true spirit of New England. Spirit being not that thing which helps you rise above, but that which weighs you down. Maybe this was why Peter wanted me to burn down the Robert Frost place, because they kept bringing in writers-in-residence like this writer-in-residence, kept bringing in men who told Peter who he was and who he wasn't, and not who he might yet be, and Peter was sick of it. This I knew for certain, as though I had Peter's letter in front of me and had read it many times and knew it by heart, which, of course, I hadn't and didn't. Because if I knew then what I know now, I recovered Peter's letter, a story I'll soon get to, I'd have known that Peter wanted me to burn down the Robert Frost place because of the director, who, of course, was sitting right next to the writer-in-residence. 6 years earlier, Peter had written me the letter after I'd been released from prison. The director had hired Peter to fix a leak in the roof. A week after Peter had fixed it and been paid for the fixing, the roof had started to leak again, and Peter refused to fix it again unless he was paid again. The director not only didn't pay him again, but he also made it known that Peter was unreliable and shouldn't be hired, and now Peter couldn't get work. Even 6 years later, he apparently couldn't get work, and so he wanted me to burn down the Frost place because he wanted revenge on the director. The letter didn't say why Peter couldn't just burn the house down himself, but the bumbled condition of his bathroom gave me a pretty good idea. In any case, his wanting me to burn down the Frost place had nothing to do with the writer-in-residence, just as the writer-in-residence had nothing to do with Frost himself, even though he was there under Frost's name. I wonder if this is why writers die, so they don't have to sit around and have people misconstrue what sort of writer they are. I wonder if people die for this reason, too. As for why Peter read so much and had so many books scattered around his house, his letter didn't say. Maybe because he couldn't get any work and he had so much time to kill, and reading helped him do that. Maybe he was bored. Maybe he liked to read. Maybe the books were from the library and free, the way so few things are. Or maybe his reasons were private, if private means not that someone else wouldn't understand our reasons, but that we don't entirely understand them ourselves. In any case, I thought I knew who Peter hated and why he hated him, and I felt for Peter and wanted to do something to help him, something besides what he wanted me to do. Meanwhile, the applause kept going on, and the writer-in-residence sat there looking more and more severe and drinking more and more bourbon, and the director was looking more and more pleased, and Peter's face was getting redder and redder, and you could tell its resentment was getting hotter and hotter, and let's just say I felt I had to do something. If that's not good enough, let's just say that if the spirit of New England was in the writer-in-residence, then the spirit of my mother, book reader and storyteller, was in me. I have a question, I said, and then stood up to ask it. I'll stop there.